All right, let's talk about economics, but we're going to do it in a totally different way. We're not going to get lost in abstract models. Instead, we're going to look at it through the lens of the fundamental laws that run the entire universe, our planet, and even our own bodies. We're talking about an economic theory that actually lines up with physics and biology.
So let's dive right in, because at the very heart of this whole idea is this massive conflict, a real clash between how mainstream economics sees the world and, well, how the universe actually works.
And that forces us to ask a really provocative question. What if the economic theories that literally shape our policies and our everyday lives are built on a foundation that's completely, utterly detached from physical reality?
And this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you have mainstream economics. It describes a world that's kind of like a perfect machine. It's reversible, it's always seeking balance and equilibrium. But on the other side, that's physics and biology. That's the world we actually live in, a living system defined by constant change, irreversible decay, competition, and a non-stop flow of energy.
Okay, so let's pull on that one thread a little more, that central pillar of mainstream economics, the idea of general equilibrium. It is, no joke, the bedrock of pretty much every textbook model out there.
So the theory goes that a free market, if you just leave it alone, will naturally find this perfect, stable state. It's a really comforting thought, like a pendulum that always comes back to the center. But to make the math for this beautiful idea work, economists had to make a few, let's call them interesting assumptions.
And I mean, just listen to this. This is wild. To prove that markets reach this perfect balance, the most famous model has to assume a world where nobody actually needs to do anything. No producing, no exchanging, nothing, because everyone already has everything they will ever need forever. Think about that for a second.
So here's the crucial point. When our whole economic worldview is built on this illusion of perfection, real-world events like a company going bankrupt or a massive financial crisis are just labeled as unpredictable shocks. They're treated like these bizarre exceptions to the rule, instead of what they actually are, totally natural outcomes of a complex, living, and fundamentally unstable system.
Okay, so if the whole mechanical idea of equilibrium is basically a dead end, what's the alternative? Well, let's build a new foundation, one based on a universal law that governs everything from the biggest stars to the smallest cells.
And that law is the second law of thermodynamics. You might know it as entropy. And what it says is pretty simple. Everything in the universe is on a one-way trip from order to disorder. Things fall apart. It is an irreversible flow, not some perfect, repeatable balance. And this right here is the core of this whole new perspective. An economy isn't a machine looking for a place to rest. It's a living system, just like you and me. And to stay alive, it has to constantly pull in ordered, low-entropy resources from the environment. We're talking oil, minerals, food, just to maintain its own complex structure and fight off that constant, relentless pull of decay. The goal isn't balance. The goal is survival. Now, once you start seeing the economy as a living system that's governed by entropy, it completely flips how you think about the most basic economic ideas, starting with the concept of value itself.
In this way of thinking, value isn't some fuzzy, subjective feeling of utility. Nope, it's an objective, mathematical measure of scarcity. So what does that formula mean? It means value boils down to two things: P, which is how rare a resource is, and B, which is how many people are supplying it. And as something gets rarer, or as competitors drop out, its value goes up, and not just a little, but logarithmically.
Okay, but does this simple formula actually work in the real world? Let's look at a fantastic test case. Back in 2005, a Canadian airline called Jetsgo just suddenly went bankrupt. Poof, gone. Now, on a bunch of routes, this instantly dropped the number of major competitors from 4 down to 3. So using that entropy formula, we can actually predict what should happen to the value of the remaining airlines.
And here's the amazing part. The formula predicted a 26.2% jump in value. The reality? The very next day, the average stock price of its main competitors shot up by 27.3%. I mean, that is incredibly close. It suggests this physics-based model of value actually has some serious predictive power.
So, if the economy is a living system that's in a constant battle to manage resource flows just to stay alive, what does that tell us about the role of rules and, government?
Well, the old-school equilibrium model sees regulation as an outsider. It's this external force that intervenes in the otherwise perfect market, and all it does is create distortions and make things less efficient.
But the biophysical view? It sees it completely differently. Regulation is not an external intervention. It's an internal, absolutely essential function. The word for it is homeostasis. It's the process that allows any complex living system, from your own body to an entire economy, to maintain a stable, safe internal environment.
I mean, think about it this way. A living cell can't even exist without a membrane to control what comes in and out. An engine would melt without a cooling system to manage all that heat. And a complex society, it can't function without laws and rules. Regulation isn't a bug, it's a feature. It is the very framework that makes complexity possible in the first place.
So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway when we stop thinking about our economy as some perfect machine and start seeing it for what it really is? A living, breathing, and very resource-hungry system. Let's just put it all side by side. When you make that one shift, from a mechanical view to a biological one, every single core economic concept totally transforms. Instead of a balanced machine, you see a living organism. Instead of value being based on feelings, you see it's based on objective scarcity. And instead of seeing crises as shocks and regulations as intrusions, you see them for what they are, natural, essential parts of a complex living system.
And all of this brings us to one final, absolutely crucial question. Because this isn't just some academic debate. If our economy is a living thing that needs a constant flow of energy and materials from the environment simply to survive, what in the world does that mean for our long-term future on a planet with finite resources? It forces us to confront the reality of limits in a way that theories of a perfect, magical equilibrium never, ever will.